Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, PhD, and this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving women leaders, and we talk about leadership purpose and its importance for you. I am a college professor, and when I am not doing that, I am speaking, writing, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women leaders how to find, and not only find, but how to stay in alignment with their leadership purpose so they can make a meaningful difference right there in their career, leadership, or business. Okay, let's dive in. Before we get into the episode, I have an exciting invitation for you. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Robin, and I want to let you know and invite you to a new group I started. It's called the Leadership Purpose Community. The Leadership Purpose Community. And it's a group that I think would be a really good fit for you as a listener of the podcast, because it's an extension of the podcast and we discuss a lot of the issues we do in the podcast and even more. And we'll be focusing on finding fulfillment in our work through leadership purpose. We'll address issues that face high-achieving women, issues and challenges, and we also will celebrate the achievements of high-achieving women. And you know, as I always say, what I mean by high-achieving women, women who are professional, ambitious, goal-oriented, doing all the things and supporting everyone else. This group is for you. And so I think you'd really enjoy it. And I'd love to have you come and join us. Love, love, love to have you come and join us. So if you're interested, come on over to Facebook and search for the Leadership Purpose Community, or go directly to the website, www.facebook.com/groups/Leadership Purpose Community. Again, www.facebook.com/groups/Leadership Purpose Community. I'd really love for you to join us. Hope to see you there. Okay, let's get to the episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. So glad you're here and listening into our podcast. We really appreciate you for tuning in and joining us. And today I'm talking with Lisa Johnson. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Lisa Johnson. Lisa Johnson is an attorney, a freelance writer, and creator of the amazing blog, Anali's Next Amendment, where she's been blogging since 2006. And she has a very interesting mix of writing about life, food, one of my favorite subjects, wellness, and yoga. And she has written for several publications, including The Atlantic. Welcome, Lisa Johnson.
Thank you so much, Robin. It's wonderful to be here.
So glad you're here. Let's jump right in. All right. So I just said a little bit about you, but why don't you tell us in your own words a little bit about you and your work?
Well, I guess my work, when I was thinking about, coming on the podcast, it kind of splits in two at a certain point. So I was working as an attorney for a while. Still am working as an attorney. But at this certain job, I realized I was coming to a point where either I was going to decide to do writing on my own or kind of, let that go. And, the time goes by. I think at that point I was my late 30s, and writing has always been something that I wanted to do. So I decided to just start looking for freelance writing assignments. And basically, like it has now, it kind of started with writing about legal issues and writing about food. And I guess pretty much it's continued from there. I guess my first freelance writing assignments, some of the first, were reviewing 2 restaurants for a book called Hungry Boston, which was really fun. And then I also used to write book reviews for the Bar Association here in Massachusetts. And from there, I guess I've kind of had this parallel career path where I'm writing about food and law outside of my day job, which is a lawyer.
I think that's so fascinating. And that's why one of the reasons why I wanted you to talk and share on the podcast, because you do something that I think most people might be trying to do and can't quite figure out or give themselves permission to do, which is combine two passions or more than one passions in the way that you have done. And it sounds like you figured it out.
I don't know that I've figured it out, but I keep trying. I don't know that there's ever a figuring out something because life goes on and life changes. It kind of reminds me, in fairy tales and the ending, they lived happily ever after. And that's because it just ends. But life doesn't just end. You're still here and you're still changing and learning new things and trying new things out. So it's just a continual learning process.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Right. And so figuring it out is not really like the end. It's just doing it. It's just doing it. And like in your case, you're doing it. Yeah. So I hope that inspires and encourages somebody who's listening to say, yeah, let me just try this other thing because you were, doing your law work and said, hey, let me incorporate some of this other passion. So now tell us about the name of your blog and how do you come to that name? It just occurred to me right now when I was thinking about, your introduction. I was like, oh, let's hear about that.
Well, it's Anali's Next Amendment. It actually is the second iteration of the blog. The first one was Anali's First Amendment. And basically, I wrote about mostly food, probably more than I do now, but just, current events as well. But that blog was on Blogger, which is kind of an old school platform for blogs. I guess I kind of advanced from that after a few years and got my own domain outside of the Blogger domain. And with that, I figured, well, it's the next chapter. So it's the Next Amendment. And that's how I got that title. The name Anali, basically, I just kind of made up the name because back when I started blogging was considered kind of sketchy. Nobody, it was new. This was back in 2006 and nobody really understood what it was. So it was just kind of an experiment. So since I did have my, day job, I didn't want any issues. So it was basically a pseudonym. And I ended up kind of getting freelance work and other types of work from the blog. And because you kind of want to spread it around and let people know what you're doing, you have to give your real name. So I still had this pseudonym, but my real name eventually was on the blog. So
you grew into the point of having to use your real name.
Exactly.
So you mentioned your day job. Tell us a little bit about what you do in your day job.
Well, basically, it's nothing that glamorous, but the work that I do is pretty much reviewing documents is basically what you would consider it. So like if you read it in the paper, somebody found an email that ended up being this big thing in this case. I'm one of those people in the background and kind of reading emails, reading different documents. Sometimes I do commercial lease review as well. So that's what I'm doing during the day. So it's project-based for different, I work for different agencies. And through the agencies, I work for different law firms. Before, the law firms that I was working for were mostly big ones in the Boston area. And I used to go to an office back before COVID. But since then, I work at home because everything can be done online. I have also worked for firms outside of the Boston area. So because of COVID, basically the whole country has opened up for work.
Yeah, which is great. So let me see if I have a clear understanding. So basically, you're reviewing the documents to make sure they're in some sort of compliance, I'm imagining, some legal compliance or...
It's all different things. I mean, if it's litigation, there might be a subpoena request for certain documents. So people have to go through and weed through them. If it's a lease review, there might be questions about who has to do what, depending upon the type of lease, in terms of maintenance or just anything, how do you interpret this lease? And, sometimes it's not all litigation, could be just regular compliance, like you say, but different documents have to be pulled. And there's millions of documents. So you have to bring on large groups of people often to do this work. And so a law firm might hire, an outside agency to do this because they don't have enough people on staff to do the work. So that's pretty much it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I asked that question to kind of give us a little insight because sometimes we don't even realize if we're not in that field what goes
Right.
on behind the scenes. So,
Hmm.
okay, so that was good to hear. Now you have the two loves. I'll call them loves. You have your you have your law work and you have the writing work. Tell
Hmm.
us, you can pick either one. Tell us what you enjoy most about your work. What you really like, what really lights you up when you think about it. You can pick either one or both if you want.
Well, I think what we were just talking about earlier when I mentioned, so basically, if you visit my blog, you'll see there's something called Free Yoga Boston. And basically that started where I noticed there were all these different free yoga classes popping up in Boston, in the area. And it was kind of hard to keep track of them. So I was wondering, I wanted to go to some of them myself. And I'm kind of a planner. I'm very much, when can I do this? When can I do that? And so I needed like a better schedule, but nobody had a schedule of these classes. So it was just kind of random ones here and there. And, I kept kind of waiting for someone to put together a list. Silly me. And no one did. And I was like, well, maybe it's up to me to put together the list. So I kind of wondered, like, who am I to do this? But I was like, well, no one else is doing it and I want it. And maybe if I want it, other people do too. So I put together this list. It's grown over the years and a lot of people enjoy it, use it, get to classes. And I found out that actually one woman in particular, she mentioned that she used that list like a Bible and she went to every single class and she ended up becoming a yoga instructor. And I was just like so happy to hear this. Like the list made a difference. It worked.
I love that.
So when people actually find the work that I do useful, what I write enjoyable, inspirational, that just makes me so happy. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
I love that. And I love that story for many reasons. And one is it was there, you saw there was a need for yourself. And you're like,
Hmm.
all these different yoga classes, I need them all in one place, right? One
Hmm.
thing. And you're like, well, who am I to do it? And I'm thinking other people have asked that same question. I'm thinking right now somebody's listening and saying, I want this thing. There's a need for it. And why doesn't somebody do it? I can do it. Or should I do it? So here you are, have a prime example here from Lisa Johnson. Yes, do it. Do it.
Definitely do it.
Do it. And look what happened. You put the list together, you, in a sense, curated the
Mhm.
yoga classes in the area, in the Boston area, and it impacted someone's journey so much that they moved into doing that for their work, teaching yoga. I
Mhm.
mean, that's amazing.
I
That's
was very happy to hear it. And I wish I hadn't waited so long because I literally waited years to put together the list. I did realize that one reason probably people didn't do it is because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of research to put together. I have it by the day. So you can look, Monday, Tuesday, what time, there's a certain class, where it is. So it makes it easy for people to go. And, I see, okay, it's not so easy. It takes a lot of time. And sometimes I don't get out the list as soon as I want to. I actually just put up a winter spring list, I guess a few weeks ago. And I had wanted to do that list earlier in the season, but life happens and you just have to adjust. This is really something I'm just doing on my own. No one's paying me. And, you have to focus on priorities. And sometimes things have to just kind of, wait until you can get to them.
yes, yes. And so many lessons in that. So many lessons in that. I just was encouraging everybody, do it, right? Do it. And you
Mhm.
pointed out, well, it's hard work, but the reward is in that it's helping others, right? It's hard
Mhm.
work, and you just kind of do it. And sometimes life interrupts the plan for it, but then you pick it up and do it when you can. So those are some real valuable
Mhm.
lessons out of your experience. And I can understand that with this podcast. Early on, I thought to myself, I mean, for a couple years, I was thinking about, I'd love to do a
Mhm.
podcast. And for all these reasons, I talked myself out of it. And then finally I did it. And I am so glad I did. I'm so glad I did. And like you just said, from your experience, yeah, sometimes it's work and sometimes scheduling and other things don't work out. But in the end, it's very rewarding and meaningful for me. So your story encourages me to keep going in that regard. And I hope it's inspiring somebody as they're listening now. And when I created the podcast, I created it for what I call high achieving women, women who are ambitious, professional, goal oriented, doing all the things. In their professional life, they're very responsible. In their personal life, they're very responsible. They're the ones that support other people. And so I wondered, who supports them? Wouldn't it be nice to have a place where we have other women like that who can share from their experience to encourage and inspire us to keep going and to support us? And so with that in mind, I created the podcast with that intent. And with that in mind, with that person in mind, what's something you can share from your experience, any part of your experience, personal or professional, that is a word of advice or a helpful hint? We've already gleaned some insights from your story already, but what's something that you can share with the listener who I described?
Well, first, I just want to say I'm so glad you started this podcast and that you took that leap because it's wonderful. I've actually been going back and listening to some of your prior podcasts, and they're all inspirational. And one of the things that I was thinking about was there's a quote that it's on the blog as my motto and something that's really kind of pushed me forward. And it's a quote by Rumi, and it says, "Let yourself be silently drawn by the stronger pull of what you really love." Mm. And I feel like that's my guiding light in terms of what I've been doing. And, when I kind of was at that crossroads, am I going to start writing or am I going to kind of let that go? And I couldn't let it go. It's something that I've always loved since I was a child. And I think that we should actually listen to our inner child more and think about what that person loved when they were younger. Because if you haven't done that yet, you're probably missing out on what you really want to do. And if anyone is searching for what they really want to do, what they want to accomplish, remember that inner child and think about that quote. And what draws you forward? What's pulling you? How do you feel about certain things? And just kind of follow your intuition, follow what's leading you, what's pulling you.
Yes, yes. And tell us the quote again. It's so powerful.
Let yourself be silently drawn by the stronger pull of what you really love.
I love that. Yeah.
I was mesmerized by it when I first saw it. I said, that's it. That's life.
Yes. Yes. Being drawn by what you love. And to your point about, what did you love when you were young and when you were a child? And I remember, and it didn't even occur to me until well after doing the podcast, I remembered when I was in high school, I had this fantasy of being on the radio.
Oh, wow. And you did it.
Yeah. And so apparently it was calling me all those years, like your quote says, but I didn't recognize it so consciously.
Exactly.
It made itself known anyway through this podcast.
It's always there. Our inner child is always there.
Yeah.
To guide us, really.
Yeah. Those things that we got excited about in our early years are still lingering in us.
Exactly.
Yes. So as you know, the podcast is Leadership Purpose, and it's about leadership purpose. I'm trying to use that term in my own ways, but I'd like to hear from you. When you hear the term leadership purpose, what comes to your mind?
I guess I think about the phrase, how do you lead your life? And basically, we're all leaders and followers in different ways. So I think about, are you leading your life in a way that you're happy with, that brings you joy? And if you are, I think you actually are a leader to somebody because somebody's watching you, even though you may not know. This actually reminds me of a story my mom told me. I was doing a reading, actually as a result of my blog. So many opportunities have come about, but I was reading a passage from a book in a bookstore. And I didn't notice it, but as I was up there reading, there was a little Black girl watching me. I would have never known, but my mom told me after. And she said she was mesmerized when she saw you. So we are that person mesmerizing somebody. We just don't know it. Somebody's watching us, looking for guidance and getting inspired. And so are we leading our lives in ways that will do that?
I love that. And when you were talking about that, I could almost see the little girl.
And I wish I had seen her, but I never saw her.
Yeah. Which again is another insightful lesson. We don't see the people, right? We don't know who's looking and watching, but we are impacting and leading. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So do you think then having leadership purpose is important?
Yes, definitely. I don't quite know how to explain it other than, how are you leading your life? But I think it's important.
Mhm.
Are you leading your life the way you want to? We're all getting older. We think about how many years we have left. Are we doing what we want to do? And if you're not, when do you think you're going to do it? What are you waiting for?
Yes.
Um,
Yes. And time is flying by. As you and I were talking about before we started recording, the time is just going by
mhm.
so quickly, especially in the past couple of years. Lisa, this has been so insightful. Now, let's see, is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you want to share before we can tell people how they can get in touch with you?
There's not really anything I can think of right now, but just basically, follow that inner child. Try to do what you really want to do. What is your soul calling for you to do? Do
Yeah.
it while you have the time.
Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, that's great. And if people want to check out your amazing blog, where can they find your blog?
Well, they could Google it, Anali's Next Amendment. That's ANALI_S, Next Amendment. And it's AnalisAmendmentBlog.com.
Okay. All right. And we'll make sure we put that in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Lisa, thank you for taking time out of all that you're doing to share with us today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Robin. It was wonderful being here.
All right, everyone. And if you want to hear more from me, come on over to my website, robinlowens.com, robinlowens.com, or I'd love to hear from you on social media. Pick your favorite social media channel, Robin L. Owens, PhD, Robin L. Owens, PhD, and send me a message. Let me know what you want to hear more of on the podcast. I would love to hear from you. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Robin signing off. See you next time.